Man, I remember this car. Back in my youth, some fancy magazine, beautiful photos, a Shahid Mobile. And now, 20 years later, hello again. I love my job. If it weren't for the rather restrictive backrest, which unfortunately doesn't allow me to sit precisely the way I truly desire, I would confidently say that I am quite comfortable riding in this particular cart. And the Frenchman is also appropriate here. No, well, it's obvious that they tried. It's obvious that they tried really hard. Muscovite. You won't believe it, but the most fruitful period for the plant was the last years of the Moskvich plant. You think that's it, the models are finished. But no, they miraculously rise from the very dust and ashes of their former selves. And as always, a very big thank you to all of my wonderful subscribers. Mikhail Mikhailich, now that's a truly authentic Moskvich show. Although the real show with Moskvich has ended a long time ago. Karabas Barabas, it's true, is still alive and well, but the main characters of that fairy tale now and then reveal to the world either beauty or wretchedness, and sometimes both at once, as in our case. On one hand, overall, the car looks brutal. Let's try to find out about the other side now. We know who we have to thank for the plant's latest achievements, in quotes. Why things turned out this way and not another, we can only guess and make idle speculations. But one thing is certain, in the early 2000s, everything was lost. By the way, let me remind you that AZLK, as the Lenin Komsomol automobile plant, ended its journey a bit earlier, in 1993, and was later known as OAO Moskvich until 2010. That was a side note. So, the late 1990s in particular were very prolific when it came to all sorts of dead-end and not-so-dead-end models. Everyone knows about the Knyaz models. There were special hopes pinned on them. Everyone thought they would become, but they didn't. But at the same time, there was development aimed at ordinary people. For example, pickups and vehicles for municipal services. The pickups were supposed to compete with the Izh Kabluchek Pirozhok vans, which had already become hopelessly outdated about 15 years earlier. And the idea was actually a good one. The first of this new generation was the Moskvich 2335, designed on the basis of the AZLK 2141. Please note, its development began in 1987. Then, due to the general chaos, it was forgotten and only remembered again in the early 90s. The Soviet engineers themselves were the ones designing these pickups. They didn't want to just cut up the body of the 41 and slap on some makeshift pseudo-frame. They took a more elegant approach. The pickups had a unibody with reinforced side members and braces, but not this particular pickup. Here you can see how they made these makeshift inserts. Everything is visible. But let's get back to our main topic, which started to develop actively on the grounds of what was once a leading Soviet enterprise. Many years passed after the Moskvich 2141 was reborn as the Svyatogor 2141 in 1986. Thanks to the tireless genius and excellent administrator, amazing models began to appear, an entire family of Knyaz, princes, while at the same time, the production of components was being destroyed. The enterprise struggled to get back on its feet for a long time, and then the 1998 default finished it off completely. But let's set politics aside. The factory was drowning in debt, and it wanted to survive. And who had stable money? That's right, the military. So, the gentlemen decided to offer their comrades in the military a unique development, a military pickup truck, and not just any pickup, but an all-wheel drive one. Let's start with the body. The vehicle is a two-seater, but it's longer than regular pickups. The thing is, the base of the load-bearing body uses the chassis from a four-seater pickup fitted with a two-seater cab and extended pickup sides. And there you have a ready-made platform for weaponry. The turret rotates in all directions. If you want, you can mount a KPVT here, or an ATGM, or even a recoilless gun. Let's just remove this mock-up for now. But, according to the creators, there's even a sophisticated vibration damping system implemented here. Let me try to explain in detail how this innovative system actually works. You might ask, Noble Dons, what are these high-pressure hoses so intricately coiled here? It's actually very simple. On top, there's a hydraulic reservoir. Oil was poured in here, which then spread throughout the system. These hoses, these very hoses, were connected to the rear struts. A valve, just a regular car valve. Air was pumped in here with a standard car pump to create the necessary pressure. And when the vehicle took its position, something here would be pulled out and the rear struts would lock. And the car would stop rocking. That's all there is to it. The barrel's angle is adjusted with this knob. There's something up front as well. This is, accordingly, the mechanism that locks the rotation. Which, in all likelihood, probably works quite well. Oh, it works. By the way, there were also double-row cabins. I even know where one of them is hidden. The turret is attached to the body permanently and quite securely. It's welded from angle irons and has several adjustments. The body itself is reinforced with a plate. But if you look underneath, unfortunately, all the makeshift craftsmanship is revealed before your eyes. This brings us to the question of how pickups, and in fact, many magnificent Moskviches, were made. For example, from here you can immediately see that the inner part of the door consists of three separate pieces. And what do you think about the window frames, just spot welded together? It's simply a Frankenstein assembled from different parts. If you think this is just an ordinary Moskvich gearbox, that's only what it seems to you. It has its own secondary shaft, and in the tailpiece there's an interaxle differential, and accordingly a drive to the rear axle. But this drive, this all-wheel drive, has its own feature that sets it apart from the princely all-wheel drive. Here there are three self-locking differentials. Accordingly, when reversing, this Moskvich does not lose all-wheel drive. Well, I've said quite a lot. The design underwent extensive testing on factory racing cars, with advice even coming from foreign colleagues. But those were still the years of the USSR. Back in those days, there were plans to start producing the AZLK 2140 Fwextin with four-wheel drive, but it didn't work out. However, in troubled times, those developments came in handy. If the front-wheel drive is straightforward, the Moskvich's front-wheel drive, then the connection to the rear wheels is, you could say, quite original. But what else can you say? That's exactly how it is. A quick note, up front it's actually a McPherson setup, with rods like on the Audi 100. And ideally, the suspension itself was originally a foreign Bilstein. So let's talk about the rear axle. Because this is a pickup after all, and its load capacity had to be higher than princely, they installed their own axle, placing it on leaf springs, thereby lowering the body height. Holy saints! The Moskvich beam and the leaf springs are clearly from a Volga because they're long. The front CV joints are from a Moskvich and the rear differential is mounted on its own subframe with silent blocks. The shock absorbers are set diagonally and the spare tire is at the back. But just look at how everything is welded here. The differential itself, produced in Omsk in a quantity of about 100 units, if the sources are to be believed, along with the gearbox tail shafts. The differentials have a design similar to the rear differential of the Moskvich 2140. An additional mounting point is the incredibly skillfully crafted attachment of the axle housing to the body. By the way, the axle housing itself is epically long. As for the engine, it's supposed to have the UFA-made 2-liter 248. And the Red Army loved domestic products, but life is merciless. F3R. The F3R engine is a 4-cylinder inline, naturally aspirated gasoline engine with a displacement of 2 liters, producing 114 horsepower and 171 Newton-meters of torque. Interestingly, in 1992, it was supplied to the Volvo Group under a different designation, and since 1997, to our AZLK. Well, what else do you want to know about the engine? It's a trusted engine. Megane, Laguna, Scenic, Espace, Volvo, and Moskvich. The engine is a real gem. Have you seen the grille here? It's the original one, with the emblem. Though, to be honest, it was probably made from an electric heater. But that's not for sure. The interior is from Svitogor, but the seats are Automotive from a 5-seater pickup. The design is good, but the execution is very much garage style. The plastics are plastic, the velour is velour. Mind you, that's me giving it a compliment. I forgot to mention the windshield here isn't glued in, which is surprising in itself. After all, the car is from 2001. I can't properly assess the driving qualities of this car for several reasons. First, one of them is that it's really worn out. Second, I'm being careful with it. But from what I can tell, if you push it, it can show what it's capable of. And really, if you look closely at the little details in the cabin, you realize that the Moskvich is a complete technological product. For example, up top, there's its own holder for in the sun visors and a little light. The entire rear wall is finished with plastic. Respect. In conclusion, I'll say that naturally, the military didn't like the project. It was completely alien to them, that's all. There were no direct deliveries to the desert warriors in sandals in those years, and the project collapsed, just like the whole initiative of the so-called effective managers. The remaining vehicles scattered into the cracks. Some survived thanks to enthusiasts, but not many. How I wish I could gather all the Varangians, put them on a ship, and send them away for a term in accordance with the criminal code of the Russian Federation. But we are a kind people. We forgave everyone. And I will continue my harmless hunt.